Hey guys, this is John Schoen from Show and Safety and Training here with Derek. And Derek has an amazing life-saving story to share with us. Derek, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, in terms of my story, I was in my late 20s, going into my early 30s. I was completely career focused and driven, and being the invincible 30-year-old that I was really shocked one day when I started having some, uh, to be very nice to your audience here. I'll kind of gloss over this, but I was having some issues that when I went to the bathroom that caused a great deal of concern. Basically, I was filling up the basin with blood, and 30 years old,
That's
invincible.
what happened.
I looked at that and I said, well, that's peculiar. I'm going to try and ignore that for as long as I possibly can. And so ultimately, the short version of that long story is just the fact that after months and months and months and months of tests and and uh, and whatevers to try and figure out what it was, they opened me up on an operating table uh, and found 8 months later, and they found a tumor the size of a grapefruit in my intestines. And when I woke up after surgery, I had the panel of medical professionals kind of arcing around my recovery bed, and my family. They're saying, we got something, we found something we weren't expecting. We had it biopsied. You have cancer. Um, so, I mean, that'll change your outlook on life immediately.
Ah,
Um, and what happened after that point was, one, they had just severed my abdominal, so I had to get strong enough to endure chemotherapy. So they put me into rehabilitation, um, got me back on my feet. But beyond that point, um, that whole process of recovery was just so I could get into chemotherapy. I went through chemotherapy for 5 months, and of all the drugs that they hung, and well, all the drugs that they provided me, they hung all of them in an IV drip bag, except for one. And that one, they said, hey, listen, there's a possibility that if this drug gets out of the vein that we're putting it into, and it gets into the rest of your system, it could damage your heart. It's like a 2% risk. Um, but honestly, we know more about hearts than we do about cancer. So this is your best treatment for your cancer. And we'll cross that bridge if it does damage your heart. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But in the meantime, to cut down on the risk, we're going to have a nurse sit here with a plunger, with an IV, with a needle plunging into your arm. She's going to press it over the course of a half an hour. And if you feel anything strange, just let us know. We'll stop. But you're going through chemotherapy. You have cancer. Everything feels weird. So I never raised my hand. I never knew what I was looking for that would be weird beyond what I was already in. I went through, like I said, 5 months of that. And at the end, I was declared in remission. But then 3 months after that, I started having problems breathing. And at first, they thought it might be pneumonia. Then they thought it might be pleurisy. And I describe it as feeling like I had two 5-pound weights hanging from either lung. And it wasn't that difficult to breathe, but it was I would have it was tougher to breathe. It was noticeable enough. And then every now and again, I would have these 30-second bouts where the world would start spinning. My head would get heavy, my hands would get heavy, and I just have to sit down and ride out a spell for 30 seconds. Unfortunately, over the course of the following 7 years, we found out that that was heart failure due to one of my chemotherapy drugs.
wow.
And and so over the course of the 7 years, it went from 30 seconds to a minute to an hour to 24 hours a day, where it got to the point where I was sleeping for 23 of the 24 hours of the day. When I was awake, I was hacking and coughing so hard I thought my spine was going to snap in two. And I could no longer lie down flat to go to bed. I had to be propped up with pillows because my heart was no longer strong enough to pump the fluids out of my lungs. I went to bed every night wondering if I was going to wake up the next day. And thankfully, every day I would open my eyes and say, okay, I'm still here. I guess that means I keep going. So um, to try and shorten this story even more, 7 years out, I went to Thanksgiving, and I ended up picking up pneumonia. And I started getting treated for that pneumonia just before Christmas. And in the days coming after Christmas in 2010, I went for a follow-up chest x-ray. And as I'm leaving the doctor's office, I'm walking back to my car. I'm not even at the car yet. I get a call on my phone from the doctor's office saying, Mr. Fitzgerald, we're the technicians that just did your chest x-ray. We're not supposed to talk to you until we've spoken to a consulting physician, but we're holding your scans on our hand right now, and it looks like you're having some kind of cardiac event. Do you have a cardiologist? If so, you need to get to them now. And if you don't have a cardiologist, get to an emergency room right now. So I went to my cardiologist the very next day. Not the smartest thing to do, but it was scheduled. And I walked into the waiting room. They called me back to the examination room. I walked into the examination room. The nurse took my vitals. She left the room, and I collapsed. And that was it. From there, I went to the hospital, and I was in the hospital for a week. Thankfully, they were about to fit me with an external pump, an LVAD, to bridge me so that I had more time to find a compatible donor for a new heart. After a week, a nurse, the transplant coordinator, walks into my room. She's crying, and she says, Derek, we think we found your new heart. Do you still want to go through with this? And quite honestly, I didn't have a choice if I wanted to survive. I didn't have another day. I didn't have another 24 hours left in me. And so I got the heart on the night of January 3rd, 2011. And from there, at that moment, I knew that I had to be the best custodian that I could possibly be to honor the gift that I've been given, this hero's heart, this person who chose the last and probably worst day of their lives to save the life of a complete stranger. So, I decided from that moment on, when I woke up and I heard those first heartbeats, I decided from that moment on that I was going to honor this person by doing everything I could to earn the gift that I had been given. So, the surgery of a heart transplant is the physical equivalent of being hit by a Mack truck. That first month of January 2011, my first goal was trying to lift my head an inch off of a pillow. I had atrophied completely. I had gone from over 200 pounds to 128 pounds in the months following my transplant. And within that first month, I was able to get enough muscle in my neck to lift my head an inch. And then I got enough muscle in my rear end to wiggle myself out of bed, fall to the floor, and army crawl across the floor until I had a vertical surface. I would push my face up a wall or a sofa or whatever I could to get to my feet. And then I would stagger back and forth in my bedroom. 8 months after that, I did my very first in my life 5K run. 2 months after that, I did my first half marathon. 2 months after that, I learned to bike and swim. Not that I wasn't comfortable in the water, but I was a champion belly flopper and cannonballer. I didn't know technique. So it was that first 1 year after transplant, I was learning how to bike and swim. a year and 4 months after transplant, I did my first Olympic distance triathlon. A month later, I did my first half Ironman. Um, I did my first full marathon after heart transplant and cancer uh, a year and 10 months after transplant. And then in 2013, I set my eyes on an Ironman, which is a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and a 26.2-mile run. And I became, in July of 2013, I became the first cancer-surviving heart transplant to ever finish the complete 140.6-mile test of endurance in the Ironman. I've done 6 of them now, including the Hawaiian Ironman in Kona. And I've had the opportunity to raise money and funds and awareness in the fight against cancer, in organ donation and transplantation. I rode my bicycle from Santa Monica and dipped my rear wheel in the Pacific Ocean, rode 3,400 miles to Avalon, New Jersey, until I hit the Atlantic and fell into the Atlantic. It was an amazing experience. I've had the opportunity to build a foundation that helps other people who've gone through significant health challenges. And the goal is to help them improve their quality of life by helping them become more active. But of all the things that I've been able to do, the very best that has been and ever will be is the fact that I'm now approaching 9 years. Well, I'm actually just past 9 years out from heart transplant, and I have a 6-year-old daughter. And the fact that that little girl would not be here had it not been for my donor, my physicians, my family, my friends that helped keep me alive all that time. If it weren't for all those people and all those planets aligning, she wouldn't be here. So that's the greatest gift. Just knowing that every heartbeat for over 9 years now has been somebody else's. It's set the bar for how I live the rest of my life.
Wow. Wow. I normally have a bunch of follow-up questions, but I'm just gonna skip the normal ones and just ask you, what website is your foundation so people can learn more about you? This has been an amazing story.
To learn more about me, if they want to learn more about me, they can go to recycledmanspeaks.com. And then there's the foundation website, which we're still actively building. We're still going through the process of getting our charitable designation, our nonprofit designation, but that is recycledman.com. And until we get our charitable designation with our 501c3, we are doing what we can to team up with other charitable foundations and help raise funds and awareness that align with our core mission, which is helping people become more active post significant health challenge. Doesn't have to be cancer, doesn't have to be transplant related. It could be PTSD, it could be a car wreck, whatever it is. People go through stuff. We all do. And if you aren't diligent about staying active after the fact, then our worlds can close in on us. And when your world becomes confined to a lazy boy watching daytime courtroom television, not only is that not a life that is worth the pain and the struggle that you've gone through, but not only do you have the physical impact of being sedentary, but then you start losing touch with your friends and your family, and you stop going for walks with your friends or your loved one with the dog around the lake, and you stop losing all those connections that tie you to life. And the tagline for the Recycled Man Foundation is fighting for a life worth fighting for. And that's what we're here to remind people, that there is a life worth fighting for. There is life beyond significant health challenges, and it's valid, it's valuable, and it's absolutely 120% worth fighting for.
Wow, Derek. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm really, really happy that I was able to reach out to you and spend a few minutes talking with you. Um, so thank you so much for your time. And if you guys want to hear more life-saving stories, check out the Survivor Stories series on my YouTube channel. You can hit the subscribe button for notifications. Big shout out to Derek at Recycled Man. And we will be posting that information in the video and on the end slide so you can visit his website. Thank you, and stay tuned for more life-saving stories.